What if your school had no rules? No schedule, no list of required classes, no rules about fighting or respecting property. It would be total chaos, right? A constitution is a rule book, and the US Constitution is the official rule book for our entire country. It's the highest law in the land, meaning no other law can contradict it. It does two main things. First, it creates the structure of our government. It's like the blueprint for a house, showing where the different rooms or branches go. Second, it protects our basic rights. It's the foundation for our entire system of government and the rights we have as Americans. Before we had the Constitution, we had a different government called the Articles of Confederation. This was right after the Revolutionary War, and the states were terrified of creating another powerful king. So they did the opposite. They made the national government incredibly weak. Imagine a group project where every person does their own thing, and the team captain isn't allowed to assign tasks or make final decisions. That's what the Articles were like. The central government couldn't raise taxes to pay the army. It couldn't regulate trade between states, and states basically acted like 13 bickering little countries. It just didn't work. The moment everyone realized the Articles were a disaster was called Shays' Rebellion. Farmers in Massachusetts, many of them veterans from the war, were losing their farms because they couldn't pay new, high taxes. So they grabbed their muskets and shut down the local courts. The scary part? The national government was powerless. It had no money and no army to send to help. The rebellion was eventually put down by a privately funded militia, but it sent a shockwave across the country. Leaders like George Washington and James Madison realized that if they didn't fix the government, the country they just fought to create might fall apart. In response to the chaos, leaders from 12 of the 13 states met in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. Their original job was just to tweak the Articles of Confederation, but pretty quickly they realized the Articles were beyond saving. They needed to start over. So in secret, they locked the doors and windows of the Pennsylvania State House in the middle of a hot summer and spent months debating, arguing, and compromising. These 55 men, the founding fathers, weren't just fixing a government. They were inventing a new one, which became the Constitution. The Preamble is probably the most famous part of the Constitution. It starts with three powerful words: we the people. This was a revolutionary idea. It means the government doesn't get its power from a king or a state, but from us, the citizens. The rest of the Preamble is like a mission statement. It lists the 6 big goals for this new government. It's not just about rules. It's about why the rules exist: to create a unified country, make things fair, keep the peace at home, protect us from outside threats, help people live well, and most importantly, protect our freedom for ourselves and for future generations. That first phrase, we the people, leads us to our first big idea: popular sovereignty. Sovereignty just means power or the right to rule. So popular sovereignty means the people have the power. Think of it like this: the government works for us, not the other way around. We give the government its power, and we do this by voting. When you turn 18 and vote for a president, a senator, or a mayor, you are exercising your popular sovereignty. You're giving that person your consent or permission to govern you. If they do a bad job, we the people have the power to vote them out. The founders were really worried about one person or group getting total control. They just fought a war against a king, remember? So their solution was to take the power of the government and slice it into 3 separate equal pieces. This is the separation of powers. It's like splitting up chores. You don't want one person to be in charge of everything. In the US government, you have one branch that makes the rules, one branch that enforces the rules, and one branch that judges the rules. This ensures no one part of the government can become a bully and take over. Article 1 of the Constitution lays out the legislative branch, which is just a fancy name for Congress. Their main job? To make the laws. Congress itself is split into two parts, a bicameral legislature. First, you have the House of Representatives, where the number of representatives each state gets is based on its population. This made big states like Virginia happy. Second, you have the Senate, where every state gets exactly 2 senators, no matter how big or small. This made small states like Delaware happy. A law has to pass both the House and the Senate to even have a chance of becoming law. Article 2 creates the executive branch. This is the president, the vice president, and all the people who work for them, like the cabinet and federal agencies. If Congress makes the law, the executive branch enforces the law. Think about it. Congress might pass a law that says national parks must be protected. It's the executive branch, through the National Park Service, that actually hires rangers, builds trails, and makes sure people aren't polluting. The president is also the commander-in-chief of the military and our main representative to the rest of the world. Finally, Article 3 sets up the judicial branch. This is the Supreme Court and all the lower federal courts. Their job is to interpret the laws. They are the government's referees. If Congress passes a law and the president signs it, someone might say, "Hey, this new law violates my rights." That person can challenge the law in court. The courts, and ultimately the Supreme Court, get to decide if the law is fair, and most importantly, if it follows the rules of the Constitution. This power to strike down a law is called judicial review, and it's a huge check on the other branches. So you have 3 separate branches, but what stops them from just ignoring each other? That's the next big idea: checks and balances. It's like a game of rock, paper, scissors, where each branch has a way to stop or check the other 2. For example, Congress passes a law. The president can check that power by vetoing the law, which is like saying, "Nope, I don't think so." But Congress gets to check back. If they have enough votes, 2/3, they can override the veto. And then, the Supreme Court can check both of them by declaring the new law unconstitutional. It's a system designed to force teamwork and compromise. The best example of checks and balances in action is watching how a bill becomes a law. Let's say a member of the House has an idea: free pizza every Friday. The bill has to be debated and passed by the House and the Senate. That's a check right there. Then it goes to the president's desk. The president, executive, might love it and sign it into law. Or he might veto it, saying it's too expensive. That's a check. If it's vetoed, Congress, legislative, can try to override it. If it becomes law and someone sues, the Supreme Court, judicial, might look at it and say, the Constitution doesn't give the government power to buy pizza, and strike it down. That's the final check. This one sounds complicated, but it's simple. Federalism is just the power-sharing arrangement between the national government in Washington, D.C. and the state governments in your state capital. Think of it like a family. The national government is like the parents. They handle the big stuff, like protecting the whole house, national defense, and giving out allowance, printing money. The state governments are like the older siblings. They have their own rules for their own rooms, like setting school policies, speed limits, and issuing driver's licenses. And some things, like chores, taxes, everyone has to do. The next big idea is limited government. The Constitution is very clear. The government is not all-powerful. It can only do the things the Constitution specifically gives it permission to do. This is the opposite of a king, who can do whatever he wants. This also ties into the rule of law. This principle means that everyone must obey the law, no matter how rich or powerful they are. The president members of Congress, and Supreme Court justices are not above the law. If they break it, they face consequences just like any other citizen. After the Constitution was written, it wasn't law yet. It had to be ratified or approved by at least 9 of the 13 states. This kicked off a huge national debate. On one side, you had the Federalists. They loved the Constitution. They thought the country needed a strong central government to survive. On the other side were the Anti-Federalists. They were terrified. They thought the new Constitution gave the government way too much power and would just create a new king. They were especially angry that it didn't include a list of a citizen's protected rights. To solve the debate, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists struck a deal. It's called the Great Compromise, though that name is used for other things too. The Anti-Federalists, led by people like Patrick Henry, said, "We will agree to ratify this Constitution if you promise to immediately add a list of rights that the government can never ever take away." The Federalists agreed. The Constitution was ratified, and the new Congress immediately got to work writing that list. These first 10 amendments, or changes to the Constitution, are what we call the Bill of Rights. They are the government's hands-off list, protecting our most important freedoms. A Bill of Rights is the core of our individual liberties. The First Amendment is the most famous. It gives you the 5 freedoms: freedom of religion, to believe whatever you want; freedom of speech, to say what you want; freedom of the press, so news can report the truth; freedom of assembly, to protest peacefully; and freedom to petition, to complain to the government. This slide also highlights 2 other key rights. The Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, and the Fourth Amendment is your privacy amendment. It protects you, your home, and your stuff from being searched by the government without a very good reason, a warrant. A big part of the Bill of Rights protects people who are accused of a crime. The founders knew that kings could just throw people in jail forever without a trial, so they made sure that couldn't happen here. The Sixth Amendment, for example, guarantees you a speedy and public trial by a jury. The government can't just lock you away in secret. The Eighth Amendment protects you from cruel and unusual punishment. This means the government can't torture you, and the punishment has to fit the crime. The other amendments basically say, this isn't a complete list, and any powers not given to the national government are saved for the states or the people. The founders were smart. They knew they couldn't predict the future. They knew the country would change, and the Constitution would need to change with it. So, they created an amendment process to allow for updates. This is why we call it a living document. However, they didn't want the rules changing all the time based on popular trends. So, they made the process really difficult. To pass an amendment, you need a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress, and then 3/4 of all the states have to approve it. It's a very high bar, which is why in over 230 years, we've only amended it 27 times. The first 10 amendments were the Bill of Rights, but the other 17 are just as important. They've helped the Constitution keep up with our changing values. The most famous are the Civil War amendments. The 13th Amendment officially abolished slavery in all of America. The 14th defined citizenship and said everyone must be treated equally under the law. The 15th gave black men the right to vote. Later, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920, and the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age from 21 to 18, a change that happened during the Vietnam War. These amendments show how the Constitution can grow and change to make the country's ideals of liberty and justice a reality for more and more people.